There are currently 2 gateways being chronoboosted. I don't know which chronoboost belongs to which gateway. Let's say I wanted to chronoboost very specifically. Let's say I wanted to take this building. Maybe it represents not a gateway. Maybe it represents a Twilight Council or something like that. Very specifically, I want to actually, not the Twilight Council, imaginary. I want to move this chronoboost from here to here. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe it won't. I don't know. And that's a bit of a problem. We're losing this sort of predictability that's really important in StarCraft, because predictability allows us to play faster and to be in control of what's going on, which is a big part of what StarCraft is. So it happened to be the case that the chronoboost moved from here to here. Now, we know that this chronoboost should go back and forth between these two forever because it's connected to this nexus, and this nexus is the closest source. It's much closer than this one, which is further away. But should we do it very quickly, the second one, the second nexus that was once chronoboosting this gateway now moves over. The reason for that is because, as you can see by looking over here, there's a small cooldown whenever you do a chronoboost. The current solution to the problem of predictability and control is to increase this cooldown so it's easier to make sure you're chronoboosting the things that you want to chronoboost. However, there are some alternative solutions. In this video, we're going to go over 4 possible solutions. Nearest is the nexus that's nearest to the target location will be the casting nexus. Whenever talking about nearest, we're going to assume that Blizzard will implement this longer cooldown. Oldest was a solution introduced by Theo on The Patch, a show hosted by Root Cats. Basically, the chronoboost will cycle through in an order of oldest to youngest, or first to last. This is the same mechanic that currently governs the base camera or backspace button. With the jumping solution, each chronoboostable building has a move chronoboost hotkey that will only be active when chronoboost is active on that building. This includes the nexus and replaces the old chronoboost hotkey. For example, if I wanted to move this chronoboost from the forge to this gateway, I would select this forge. It would have a chronoboost hotkey, a move chronoboost hotkey on it. I would press that button and then left click on this gateway. The chronoboost would then be moved from the forge to this gateway. Finally, we have the entity solution, or the chronoboost is its own entity. This will make the chronoboost a selectable unit with the ability to move from one building to the next with a right click. It is automatically created when a nexus completes and automatically destroyed when that nexus is destroyed. This chart analyzes the number of clicks that it takes to execute certain actions in certain situations. The variables included are the number of chronoboosts you want to change, the number of nexuses that are on the field, and separate sections for worst and best case scenarios. As you can see, the entity solution on average yields the lowest number of clicks. The jumping solution works best when you want to change less chronoboosts than the number of nexuses on the field, with the exception of very specific scenarios where nearest and oldest are tied for absolute perfect best case scenario only. It's important to realize that these situations are much more rare than the worst case or in between scenarios. Finally, I want to note that nearest and oldest have identical situations in terms of the number of clicks it takes to do things. However, oldest is a little bit more predictable and understandable than nearest with the large cooldown is. But of course, advantages and disadvantages aren't only about a chart of the number of clicks it takes to do things. A unique disadvantage to the oldest and nearest systems is that the mechanic is hidden. It's not immediately apparent to the user that oldest or nearest is the way that it works, and it can cause a lot of frustration for new users. A specific disadvantage to oldest only is that it creates an inconsistency about spellcasting. If this system were to be put in place, it would be the only spell that is not always cast from the closest caster. An advantage of the jumping system is that it's very intuitive where the chronoboost is coming from and where it's going. This is opposed to the oldest and nearest systems, where it's a little bit more difficult to figure out where the chronoboost will disappear. It also has the advantage of taking less clicks than the nearest and oldest systems in the most common scenarios. Unfortunately, jumping would cause a change in hotkeys, not only for grid users, but for standard users as well. It's important to remember that disadvantages like these are short-term. Another disadvantage that is reflected in part in the click efficiency chart is that you can't use one control group every single time to chronoboost. This means that on average, you'll have to move your camera more to get the thing done that you want to get done. However, it's important to remember that what you're trading for this disadvantage is control. The player very clearly decides what happens and when it happens. In addition, it's potentially non-intuitive that the Chronoboost will die when the Nexus dies, as it may be on a gateway or a forge. Finally, the entity solution will always have the least number of clicks in every single best case scenario. On average, it will also have the least amount of clicks in worst case scenarios. Entity has the potential of being the most intuitive solution available, both from a visual standpoint and from an execution standpoint, as right-clicking is part of the rest of the game as well. Entity does not suffer from the control group issue that jumping does. Since the entity solution turns Chronoboosts into units, you could potentially put them into a control group. This wouldn't always be appropriate, but for the skilled player that knows when and when not to use control groups, it would provide increased efficiency. Unfortunately, as this is one of the more creative solutions, this might be difficult and or time-consuming to implement. In addition, the Chronoboost might need a new model in order to more clearly differentiate between clicking on the building and clicking on the Chronoboost itself. Entity also suffers from the potential non-intuitiveness of when the Nexus dies, the Chronoboost dies. The spreadsheet shown in this video is linked in the description and will be updated as different things come along. If you find any mistakes with the analysis or have any new ideas that you think I should add to the document, please go ahead and leave a comment in the description and I'll get to it right away. My name is JaKaTaK, and as always, thanks for watching. If you have an idea for a video you would like me to do, please leave it with any questions, comments, criticisms, concerns, or anything beginning with letter C in the comment section below, and I'll see you again soon.